On today's episode of the DuckZone503 Podcast, we're going to preview and predict this epic top 5 Pac-12 Championship game of number 5 Oregon versus number 3 Washington. We're going to be giving our 3 keys of the game and finally our final score prediction, so stick around. I'm your host, Dominiqk Peterson. This is the DuckZone503 Podcast, where we talk all things Oregon football. Let's get into it, people.
Welcome to the DuckZone503 Podcast, talking all things Oregon football, with your host, Dominiqk Peterson. Let's go.
Welcome into today's edition of the DuckZone503 Podcast. Today is Wednesday, November 29, 2023, and boy, oh boy, am I happy to be with you. So happy to be with you guys. I'm excited, more than excited I've ever been as a Duck fan, to be honest with you, because this is a crazy matchup, guys. We got exactly what we wanted. The Ducks are coming in to the Pac-12 Championship game with an opportunity to avenge their one and only loss, which came to the Huskies on October 14th, where the Huskies ended up winning a very close 36-33 game. I attended that game at Husky Stadium, folks. It was absolutely insane. One of the best games I've been to as a college football fan of the sport, man. I obviously, I wanted the Ducks to come out firing in that one, win that one. It was a tough back and forth game. Looked like the Ducks had it, but you know, the Huskies made the plays at the moment, and they're 12-0. And what do 12-0 teams do? They make plays when it's needed. That's the reason why they're 12-0. Guys, got to give credit to them when it's due, right? And look, Vegas during that time on October 14th had the favors Husky to around 3 points. That's basically a pick'em game, and that's ended up with it being Huskies won by 3 in that game. Now, in that game, you remember Washington got up 11 points. Oregon then storms back, goes up 4 with 2 minutes left. Felt like the Ducks had all the momentum in the world towards the end of that game. We all remember the controversial 4th down calls that Dan Lanning made in that game that ultimately led giving Washington and Michael Penix the ball at the 50-yard line with 2 minutes left in that game. We all know what happened after that. Michael Penix to Romo Doomsday, something that's been there all year long, put the Huskies on top late in the game. And the Ducks would get it close into field goal range, but Camden Lewis would miss it off to the right. Now, we're going to get the rematch of those two teams who arguably look like the 2 best teams in the whole entire country. For all the marbles on the tables, guys, all the marbles on the table. This has the making, literally, to be the best Pac-12 title game in history. And we all know it wraps up after this. So this is how she goes out in a bang, people. We got a college football playoff berth on the line, a rematch of arguably the best game of the year, Bo Nix versus Michael Penix for the Heisman, and it's all a Friday night in Las Vegas. Could it get any better than this, people? 5 p.m. kickoff time. Oregon opens up. Can you believe this? 9.5 point favorite. Oregon is playing some of the best football in the country, while Washington has been, like I said, they're 12-0, but they've been barely getting by, getting close win after close win. But look, what do championship teams do? Give credit to where it's due. They're 12-0. They're undefeated, first team in history to go undefeated in Pac-12 play. Give credit where it's due. They've made the plays when it's needed. They did it against Oregon. There's a reason why Oregon's 11-1 team and not the 12-0 team. Is because Washington made the plays when it was time. So let's get into the comments. What's up? Yeah, Camden Lewis, man, it's been a struggle. We'll get into his struggles a little bit. Ducks are taking the puppies to the pound this time around. Dorless and Birch are going to light up Micro Penix, Brian Callahan says. Yes, sir. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Brian Callahan, Black Jonesy in the building. What's going on? All right, guys. Check this out. Look, ever since the October 14 matchup of Oregon versus Washington, the average winning margin of victory for Oregon is 26.5 points per game. Meanwhile, the Washington Huskies have an average winning margin of just 6.5 points per game since that October 14th matchup, which means since that matchup, the Ducks have been absolutely blowing out teams while the Huskies have been winning by an average of less than one possession here. Now, let's go ahead. Here's a side-by-side look at similar opponents that Oregon and Washington have played, and you can obviously see that Oregon has been playing the better football since they last met. Now, what does that have to do with this game, you ask? Well, absolutely nothing, I answer to you. But my only reason I show this is to give you a clear-cut suggestion on why odd makers have Oregon as a 9.5-point favorite in this game. I mean, you can just see the side-by-side comparisons here that Oregon is playing the better football at this point in time. You put them on a neutral field, okay? This is just what the line is, 9.5. Now, offensively, defensively, the Ducks lead the conference in total offense and total defense. Bo Nix finished this year on absolute fire. While Michael Penix, he didn't necessarily fall off or anything, but his level of play did take a little bit of a dip toward the final 4 or 5 games of the season compared to what Bo Nix has done. Let's go ahead and look at, we looked at the team and the similar opponents and the final scores here. Oregon, obviously, coming up here. Let's go ahead and look at Bo Nix versus Michael Penix stats since the October 14th Oregon versus Washington game. This is it here. Michael Penix, only 1,598 passing yards compared to Bo Nix's 2,105 passing yards. That's nearly 500 more passing yards since that matchup. Michael Penix has only thrown for 12 touchdowns, while Bo Nix has thrown for 20 touchdowns. Michael Penix has turned the ball over, guys, 5 times. On one hand, all 5 fingers, 5 times. Bo Nix, just 1 interception. Just 1. And that 1 interception came on a crazy, crazy tip pass in the Cal game. And then the average margin of victory. Let's go there. 6.5 points per game for Washington. While average margin of victory for Oregon, 25.5 points per game, guys. Oh, and let's add in Bo Nix, 5 rushing touchdowns. I don't think Michael Penix has a rushing touchdown since the October 14th matchup. So Bo Nix has been playing out of his mind as of late. Michael Penix, okay, all credit where it's due, started the season on fire, but that looked like it's cooled off a little bit, as the schedule got tougher. You get to play non-con a little bit. You get to open your Pac-12 slate a little easy. Of course, you're going to put up big numbers, but once that November slate hit for Washington, where they had to play Oregon State, USC, Utah, that got hard for him, and Oregon in the midseason. So by that Oregon game, he kind of came off. Now, both these players are in the thick of the Heisman race and will get a great opportunity with the whole country watching to solidify their Heisman campaign while simultaneously punching their team's ticket to the college football playoff. Man, oh man, guys, get your popcorn, folks. It's going to be absolutely insane. Now, look, here's the thing. Bo Nix is the current leader in the betting odds for the Heisman right now. And before he went on this absolute out-of-body experience run that he's on right now, I don't know if you guys remember, but he fell all the way down to plus 3,000 odds to win the Heisman after he lost that game to Michael Penix, in which Michael Penix at that time became the betting favorite to win the Heisman. Bo Nix had a few opportunities on 4th down in that game to make some quote-unquote key Heisman moments. And I ain't going to lie to you guys. I'm going to put it to you straight. I think that was a very loud Husky Stadium crowd, one of the loudest I've ever been to, full of 70,000 roaring fans. I think it got to Bo Nix a little bit, and I hate to say it. Look, as a Duck fan, I don't want to say this, but I think he missed a few open wide receivers trying to force the ball to Troy Franklin. I think he was a little bit impatient in the pocket, and overall, he probably felt a little bit rattled in that moment on October 14th. Then you've seen what Michael Penix did. He made the play of the game, guys, and sealed it. And yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow for Duck fans, for Bo Nix, for Dan Lanning, the Oregon fan base as a whole. But what happened, happened. Now, the good news is you had every opportunity to get back here, and you did. So now, here's your chance if you're Bo Nix. Here's your chance if you're Dan Lanning. The Huskies are 12-0. Here's your chance to put a loss on their record. The team that put a loss on your record in the championship game, the game that matters most. You both deserve to be in the college football playoff, but there can only be one. The Pac-12's coming to a close. Who's it going to be? Who's going to take home this last Pac-12 trophy, guys? It all comes down to this. I can't wait, guys. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, guys, if you're not already. I'm trying to give you guys 2 podcasts a week. I'm giving you guys recruit interviews. I'm going to try to get recruits on whenever I can. And the latest updates. I know most of you are already following, but if you're not already, on all social media platforms at DuckZone503, go hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button. Go check on YouTube if you're not. I know some of you think you are. Make sure you're pressing that red button, that big red button, subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify after this comes out, I'm going to put it on Spotify. If you're listening through the headphones on Spotify or in your car or wherever you may be, make sure to rate it 5 stars for us. Really appreciate everybody who does. Go Ducks. We talk all things Pac-12 ball, soon to be Big Ten after this one. Appreciate everybody for tuning in right now. Let's go ahead and dive into some comments here. Let's see what's going on. Go Ducks, go Ducks, go Ducks, everybody. Let's go. So now we're going to talk about a little bit of injuries here on both sides going into this matchup, okay? So as you know, Michael Penix, okay, he took a few hits in that Oregon game. You remember Oregon getting to him. Now, they only finished that game with 1 sack, which I'm sure the Oregon defense is going to want to do better of in this matchup against the Huskies. But what they did do is get a lot of pressure, a lot of knockdowns on him. And you remember Michael Penix in that 4th quarter grabbing his ribs? Remember him wincing, really feeling hurt? Well, it just so happens when you look at his numbers after that game, from before that game, now you can blame it on non-con. You can blame it on higher competition, and that definitely is a factor. But something the media is not really telling you, which I'm going to tell you right now, is does Michael Penix have an injury that they don't want us to know about? Like, okay, the media comes out and shows Michael Penix hurling over, I don't know what that was, an enclosed area, and he looks like he's hurt. But they claim when you're watching the game that, oh, it's a wave of emotions. He doesn't want to watch the kick. And then the guys kind of get him off the field. You're at home here too. Remember this, guys, get him off the field. He has a hood on, not trying to show his face. Maybe he's wincing really badly or crying. I don't know how bad of pain he has. Maybe he got re-aggravated in that Apple Cup game. And he just has not been the same. Against Washington State, he was overthrowing his wide receivers. He was inaccurate. You look at his season stats at the beginning of the season to now, his completion percentage has, from month to month, from September to October to November, has drastically went down. I think he finished November with a 57% completion rating when he started out, I think, around in the high 60s, around the low 70s. I mean, the level of play for Michael Penix, maybe you can blame it on better competition. You can blame it on maybe teams figuring him out later in the season, right? We all know teams watch film, figure out some offenses, but it's drastically went down. And I'm telling you now, Husky fans, if Michael Penix is not 100% healthy, I think this is going to go the Ducks' way. That's all I got to say. And before we get into the meat and potatoes, guys, I got to announce some pretty upsetting news for the Ducks injuries side of things. Now, I'm hearing rumblings that Oregon starting corner Jaleel Florence will be out for this game and possibly even for the year, guys. According to Matt Preem of the Duck Territory podcast, it appears that Jaleel Florence will possibly even need surgery on an injury that he's been dealing with towards the end of the season. Now, look, guys, I am not a journalist. I am not close to the team whatsoever. I'm just a fan doing a podcast, and I just go off of what I hear. But there has been confirmation that he will not be playing in this game. There's been confirmation that it's possibly he will be out for the season. Now, what kind of injury is that? I have no idea. We all know Dan Lanning and the staff is very close to the chest with their injuries and information. All I know is that obviously this is a pretty big blow for the Oregon Ducks, as Jaleel Florence was their number 2 starting corner and now goes down in probably the biggest matchup of the year against one of the best offenses, if not the best pass offense in the country. Now, the good news is for Oregon is that they will have Kyrie Jackson, their best corner on their roster, no doubt about it, healthy and ready to go for this game. Now, it's important to know that Kyrie Jackson was, he was out all second half in that October 14th matchup. He was out the whole second half in that first one. So having him back fully healthy and possibly the whole game, let's fingers crossed, knock on wood, have him in this whole Pac-12 championship. That's a bright spot for the Ducks, because I think that's the guy, with Jaleel Florence going down, you're going to have to find a way to have Kyrie Jackson on Rome Odunze the whole time. We all know Rome Odunze. He's the guy that caught on us for that game-winning touchdown. He's their number one wide receiver. He's a Blitnikoff Award finalist. Troy Franklin got snubbed. That's a whole nother topic we can go on later. But, man, that guy, Rome Odunze, is really damn good. And to lose a corner like Jaleel Florence when Washington can easily scheme you out of those matchups, right? All you got to do is, send him on a jet sweep over here. And if the defense has got to rotate, you don't have time to follow a guy all the way across the field sometimes. And those can create matchup problems, and get a guy like Dante Manning, get a guy like Triquez Bridges on him. Now, in the first matchup between these two, we've seen a lot of Triquez Bridges and Kyrie Jackson. A lot of Triquez Bridges in this game when Kyrie Jackson went down. And I'm not going to lie, Triquez Bridges played pretty well. He had his ups and downs. And, in Oregon's last game against Oregon State, we've seen a lot of Dante Manning. So I don't know which one we're going to see in this game. Is it going to be Triquez, who played pretty well in the last matchup against Washington? Or is it going to be Dante Manning, who they rolled with last game and played really well, had an interception against Oregon State, matter of fact. So, there's some injury news before we get into the meat and potatoes of this matchup. But, we're hoping to see Jaleel Florence get healthy soon. This is a player that, has really came in year two and really became a starter. It took in that bigger role and has absolutely played very, very well at that starting position. And we're going to have to rely on Triquez Bridges and Dante Manning now against this passing attack that gets back. You guys remember Jalen McMillan was out in this first matchup. He was out for Washington, and they get him back. A guy like Giles Jackson, they don't have to burn his red shirt because we're in the championship series now. So they can use him as a weapon. Man, it is going to be hard for this secondary. Can this secondary really match up in this game is going to be a big question. Now, speaking of injury news, this is interesting. Let's take a sip of water before we get into this, because this goes back to last year. I don't know if you guys remember a year ago. 1 year ago, when the Ducks got upset by Washington at home, right? Autzen Stadium. I was there. And Bo Nix in that game, remember, he went down for a moment, and he was hobbled after that for the rest of the season due to what I would call a pretty dirty hit. Now, you guys can go back and watch the game, watch the clip, whatever, but I'll just explain it real quick. Look, Bo Nix takes the ball, runs up the middle, and you can see the Washington defender just dive right at Bo Nix's ankle. And look, when you make a tackle, you're taught to go for the thighs, nowhere below the knees, because that's a chop block. Nowhere too high, because then you're just going to get ran over. You kind of want to go for their knees. And if they're a big guy, obviously you try to chop block them to get them down. Bo Nix is not a big dude. And this is Alex Cook here, Washington defensive back, dives right at Bo Nix's ankle. And this is the same ankle that he's had issues in the past when Bo Nix was playing at Auburn. And he dives right at it. It was a tie game, lots on the line in a heated rivalry. And it just so happens Bo Nix get injured, and Ty Thompson had to come into that game. We all remember what happened after that. Well, let's just check in with Washington defensive back Alex Cook. Okay, Washington defensive back Alex Cook, who laid that controversial hit on Nix, and see what he had to say about it. Because this guy, you guys are going to love this. Defensive back Alex Cook, this is what he had to say about that hit. And what he has to say about Oregon fans, about you guys, about me. Let's see it.
Did you hear from a lot of Oregon fans after that play?
Yeah, and they've been, like you just said, that was a dirty hit. Like, you could have hit him differently. Like, what did you want me to do? I hit him as low as humanly possible. There was no other place on the body where I could have hit him that would have made you feel any better. I don't know. Just because he came out of the game, had to come out the game for an injury, they consider it a dirty hit, like it's football. So that's the thing about Oregon fans. When things don't go their way, they cry, and complain about everything and blame the world. So, that's what you get.
That's what we get, folks. That's what we get, folks. Yep, that's him telling all you Duck fans out there that we overreacted. That his tackle was just fine on the Dave Softy, whatever his name is, Smaller show. So, look, if you needed even more fuel to the fire to add to this one, we all know how that went for the Colorado Buffaloes when they came to Autzen and decided to be disrespectful. Well, there it is, folks. Wow. That's all I got to say to that one, folks, is wow. Let's also check in on what Oregon is wearing in this one. Guys, I always like to see what Oregon is wearing for this game. It's always clean cut for the Ducks, man. Let's check it out. Woo! Them things are clean. The all whites. Oregon's the away team, so I had a feeling they were going to go with, wearing something white. The green helmet, the green shoes. I love it, man. The green and yellow in the helmet. I know there's some people out there like, come on, we've already wore this a couple times, but man, anything Oregon wears for me, every time it's clean. I get there's been a few times, but imagine being an Alabama fan, a USC fan. These teams that wear the same damn combos for the last century. Like, we are blessed. Come on, man. Live it up. Go Ducks. All right, let's get into it, guys. Man, this rivalry between Oregon versus Washington is absolutely heated, and for a good reason. We all know Washington was everything Oregon wanted to be in the 50s all the way through about the mid-90s. It was a total ass whooping, handed out from the Huskies to the Ducks. We all know 1991 was a special year for the Huskies. They claimed their national championship after going 12-0 on that dominating run. But it was right around the 1994 season when things really started to change for these two programs in a big way after that legendary, everybody knows it, the pick play where Kenny Wheaton ran it the whole entire field and Oregon upset the Huskies back in 1994. Now, the Oregon football really started to take off and, starting to beat the Huskies on a more consistent basis. And then when the Chip Kelly era around 2008, 2009 really kicked off, that's when Oregon had some of their best teams of all time at that point and going to national championships, winning Pac-12 titles, Pac-10 at that time. And then you go to Washington, you look at what they were doing around 2008. Guys, they were the only Pac-12 team to ever go 0-12. 0-12 in 2008. So Oregon climbing the Rose Bowls, getting Pac-12 championships, everything Washington was doing in the 80s and 70s and up to mid-90s. And then Oregon beats them in the mid-90s and goes on this run with Bellotti, all that, gets the Phil Knight, donation, all that. The Nike money starts rolling in, and it just was total opposites at this point. Then, as time goes on here, around 2016, the Ducks start to fall off a little bit with Mark Helfrich, kind of running the program down. The Huskies at that time start to become prevalent again under Coach Peterson. We all know that 70-pointer in Autzen, okay? Then right around 2018, 2 years later, is when Oregon started to come back up and got a win in 2018 and 2019, 2 years in a row. Washington dipped for a second, things got a little ugly under Jimmy Lake for a quick stint, but then Kalen DeBoer and Dan Lanning, where we're at now, both have been a blessing to each of these programs, both in their second season now. I really do think that both Oregon and Washington are at the same level at this point in time. I think that's what makes this matchup so great. I think both these teams are elite. I think both these coaches can coach. I truly think that this matchup and then this year in Pacific, both Oregon and Washington are both playoff caliber teams. We're seeing a quarterfinal playoff matchup right here. And we all know the playoff goes to 12 teams next year. And I think these are two of the best four teams in the country. They're going to be duking it out. And what better place to do it in Las Vegas? Two heavyweight champs for a championship match, right? Oregon, Washington. This is very well a playoff game before the college football playoff starts, guys. I think this is a huge game. And when it comes down to bragging rights, that's even more of a topic we can talk about. Bragging rights. We all know this rivalry is carrying on to the Big Ten. And thank God it is, because At this moment in time, this rivalry is at an all-time high in level of confidence of fandom on both sides. Both teams know this is a special season. Both teams got a lot in the line. Both teams know this is a special year with both quarterbacks. Both teams want it. The Ducks just recently rattled off 12 straight wins on the Huskies. The Huskies have now won the last 2 matchups in very close games in this rivalry. Dan Lanning is 0-2 against the Huskies. This is the first time that the Huskies are 12-0 since 1991, and they are the first team ever in the Pac-12 era to go 9-0 in conference play. Now, here's the deal. Speaking about bragging rights in a heated rivalry and which side gets to possess it heading into Big Ten play next year, can you imagine if Washington were to win this game over the Ducks? Guys, you would have total chaos in the streets of Eugene and on Oregon Twitter. Don't go on Oregon Twitter if we lose. Although this is a very successful season in my eyes, look, guys, if we lose, don't have your head down. This is only the fourth, believe it or not, the fourth time that Oregon has 11-plus win on the season in Oregon football history. Now, a very sizable portion of our fan base is not going to be happy with Dan Lanning going 0-3 against Washington in his career, especially dropping this championship game where it matters most. Now, I personally wouldn't be part of that crowd. Every time Lanning has played Washington, they're one of the best teams in the conference, so I wouldn't fault them for that too much. But Washington would go on to the Big Ten, possessing the last Pac-12 title and beating Oregon 3 straight times in doing so. Now, that would be crazy. But what if Oregon wins this game? And a lot of people around the country believe they're going to do so. I mean, the Ducks come into this as a 9.5-point favorite for a reason. Do you understand what kind of bragging rights the Oregon fan base would possess if the Ducks were to spoil everything that Washington has hoped and dreamed for? I mean, the Washington fan base might as well go crawl into a ball and hide if they lose this game, because the Ducks would have won the biggest and most meaningful game between these two teams in history. And Bo Nix would also most likely be your Heisman Trophy winner. And Oregon, not Washington, Oregon would be going to the college football playoff. Now, lots of bragging rights, and most importantly, a championship is on the line on Friday. Now, you could put your money on the line and potentially win a bunch of money playing Mojo Fantasy, guys. This video is brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. It's a crazy new app that turns sportsbook odds and selections into fantasy contests. Here's how it works, guys. There are thousands of NFL and MLB player props. You build a portfolio, and the better your portfolio performs, the more cash you win. Pick as many props as you want and try to beat the crowd. It's a whole new way to play fantasy. The props act like stocks, so you can buy and sell. You can buy and sell live all game long. It's the only fantasy app that lets you make moves after the game starts, so you're not stuck with a bad pick. You can cash in on a hot start or just hang on and let them ride. Cash contests are based on real sportsbook odds. Get the same live player, prop selection, odds, and cash outs as Mojo's New Jersey Sportsbook. You can trade sports like stocks. You control the action, guys. Ride your picks, cash out, or enter new positions instantly. And there's no house advantage. One of the best parts about Mojo. You beat the crowd by building the biggest portfolio to climb the leaderboard and win cash prizes. That's it, guys. Make picks, make moves, make money. Download now on the Apple App Store and use my code DuckZone for a 100% deposit match up to $100 for your first time deposit. Link in the description for more. All right, guys. So that brings me to, what does Washington need to do to win this game as 9.5-point underdogs against the Ducks? They've done it twice now. They got Dan Lanning once in the Ducks last year. They got him very narrowly at home this year. What do they got to do to beat the Ducks a third time? Number one for Huskies, I got establish a quick passing game for Michael Penix. Look, we all know what Washington likes to do at this point. They like to chuck it deep to Romo Doomsday and those wide receivers and make big plays down the field. And they're elite at doing so. Don't get me wrong. But where Washington has been exposed a little bit is when teams are able to create pressure on Michael Penix and kind of cause him to be uncomfortable. That's what Oregon, Arizona State, and Washington State did successfully to Michael Penix when they played him, is get pressure in his face. Now, To counter that, I think, and I guarantee Oregon's going to be drawing up blitz packages in this game. If you're Washington, how do you counter that? You go for a game plan here, and you do the quote-unquote paper cut them down the field type of game here. 5-yard slants, comeback routes, especially keeping. And when you're doing that, when you're giving 5 yards down the field, you're keeping Bo Nix and that Oregon offense on the sideline, and that will be beneficial in this game plan. Now, you don't always need to go for the home run play here, especially when the opposing team has just as a dangerous offense as mine, right? If I'm Washington. And at number 2 for the Huskies, I got Dylan Johnson needs to be carrying the ball over 4.5 yards per carry. Okay. This one's funny because I can hear a lot of you asking, Dom, why is a running back on the list of keys for Washington when they're a pass first team? Well, guys, take a look in the last 2 games for Washington where they beat the Ducks. Okay. In 2022, Wayne Tuilapa, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Tuilapapa, Jesus, rushed for 70 yards now 70 yards is not a lot, but yeah, he rushed 7 yards per carry, guys. 7 yards per carry in that matchup, which really helped the Huskies on that matchup. 2023, Dylan Johnson rushed for 100 yards on 5 yards per carry. Every rush, he's getting 5 yards, guys. And I think that was the first time in his career as a Husky that he reached over 100 yards rushing against the Ducks. So when you compare a run game going for at least 5 yards a carry, paired with the likes of Michael Penix at quarterback and all those wide receivers, it just makes it that much more difficult for defenses to defend you. And the last 2 matchups, the Huskies have quietly, it hasn't been talked about enough, have quietly been able to run the ball on the Ducks pretty effectively. And the Ducks this year have absolutely shut down opponents' run game. They did it against Utah. They did it against Oregon State as of late. So let's hope that carries into here. And whenever Washington runs that ball, it's for just 1, 2, maybe 3 yards per carry at best. And then number 3, contain Oregon's run game if you're Washington, right? So on the other side of the ball, okay, you're going to have to contain Oregon's run game and try to make Bo Nix beat you by himself. Oregon comes into the conference as the number 1 total offense. And a huge part of that is because they are so balanced with their run attack. Bucky Irving had a very good game against the Huskies last time around. I have a feeling the Ducks will try to attack the front 7 of the Huskies again. And if the Huskies want to have success, containing that run game is key for the Huskies. Okay, what does Oregon need to do to beat the Huskies? They lost the last 2 matchups in this one. If they're going for a championship, they got to get it done. What do they got to do? Number 1, I got start fast. Look, the Ducks are coming into this one, if not the hottest team in college football right now. Ever since that loss to Washington October 14th, they have been beating teams by an average margin of 25.5 points. Both sides of the ball, offensively, defensively, have been absolutely dominant, and that's why you're going into this game favored by 9.5 points. So I think if you're Oregon, you lost the last 2 games, and you come into this with a chip on your shoulder thinking and knowing that you are the better football team overall. I think starting fast in this game, going up 14-0, maybe 17, 21-0, would be absolutely huge for the Ducks in this game. Not only would that, that thought of, oh, maybe the experts are right about this Oregon team start to creep in for those Husky players on the sideline, but the confidence of those Duck players and the coaching staff would start to reach levels that we haven't seen yet. And we all know how we play when we're confident on the football field, and that's the scariest thought for this Oregon team. Number 2, I got front 7 pressure Michael Penix all game long. I touched on this earlier, guys. 4 games have been within 1 score possession for Washington since they played the Ducks. What do all those games have in common? Teams have been able to get pressure on Michael Penix. Now, Penix seems to have a little, he seems to be a little comfortable and, more times than not, off timing with his wide receivers when he is pressured and have guys flying in his face. Now, getting pressure on quarterbacks has certainly been a strength of this Oregon team. The front 7 has certainly been a strength for the Ducks. The big question is, if that pressure starts to kill you and Michael Penix starts to dissect that pressure, What do you do then? So this chess match is going to be fun to watch, man. This is going to be fun. The number 3, I got Bo Nix, Heisman performance. Let's get 350 plus yards and 3 touchdowns on the board. It's been talked about throughout this whole season and this whole week. Michael Penix, Bo Nix, who deserves the Heisman Trophy? Well, the stage just got sat right there in front of you, in front of a national audience. And a championship game, for one of these quarterbacks to show up and have a Heisman performance is everything they need to cap this thing off. I want to see Bo Nix get over 350 yards passing and 3 total touchdowns in this game and take the win, locking in this Heisman Trophy, baby. So for the Ducks to win, I got number 1, start fast. Number 2, front 7 pressure on Michael Penix all game long. And at number 3, we got to have Bo Nix. Bo Nix. Heisman type performance, 350 plus yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. What does Washington need to do to beat Oregon? This is what I got for them. I got number 1, establish a quick passing game for Michael Penix. Number 2, Dylan Johnson over 4.5 yards per carry. And then number 3, contain Oregon's run game. Okay, guys, this is what we have been waiting for. This is it. I'm going to give you my final score prediction here in a second. Let's check in on these comments real quick. What up? Ducks over Huskies, Troy Franklin, Tez Johnson. Yeah, Tez has really came into his own as of late. It has been a night and day of what Tez Johnson has been from the start of the season towards the end of the season. Okay, guys, final score prediction time. This is it, guys, for it all. Number 5, Oregon versus number 3, Washington. Who is going to win this game? Look, Washington has won the last 2 against the Ducks, and they've been close. But Washington has found a way to win each and every time. And that's really been the story of their season. They're 12-0 for the first time since 1991. They are 9-0 in the Pac-12, the only team to do that in the Pac-12 era. They have a very special opportunity to have a very special season for this Washington program and what they've been waiting for. Now, all that stand in the way are those pesky Ducks. Well, I got bad news for you, Washington. Respect for having a hell of a season and getting the best of the Ducks at your place earlier in the season. But the way this Duck team is playing right now is the hottest in the country. I'm not sure if there's one college football team, maybe Georgia, that would want to go out and play the Ducks right now the way they're playing. Bo Nix in this offense is just in another lane, and they have been on a consistent roll on offense, and probably one of the most consistent offenses in the country, scoring 30-plus points per game in every game played this year. Defensively, the Ducks have shut down every opponent they have played since that Washington game. Guys, give me the Ducks in this one. I also like them to eventually pull away and cover in this game. I got Oregon winning 38-24 over the Huskies in Las Vegas. I think this game is going to go back and forth for 3 quarters. I think it's going to be close. Probably even be tied up into the fourth, 24-24. But I think the Ducks will have enough on the defensive side of the ball, something that the Ducks have had the edge over Washington all year long and statistically have the edge over Washington. I think the defense will show up on a championship moment in the fourth quarter and shut out Washington, and Bo Nix will lead 2 scores down the field for a 38-24 win over the Huskies for the Ducks to win their 3rd Pac-12 title in 5 years and march their way to the college football playoff. And Bo Nix will be going to New York and taking the Heisman Trophy. That's my final score prediction, baby. Let's go, Ducks. Yeah, go. All right, guys, let's get into this one. Let's go ahead and predict the other Power 5 Conference Championship matchups. There are only 12 teams playing this weekend, folks, and the Ducks are lucky enough to be one of those teams. Let's start out here with the Big 12 Championship. We got Oklahoma State barely getting in by the skin of their teeth, going against Texas here. And as a Ducks fan, who do we want to win? Of course, we want Oklahoma State to pull the upset. Now, is it likely? I don't think so. I think Texas is gonna get it done here. Look, if Oklahoma State is gonna have the upset, which Oklahoma State, they've won 8 of the last 10 matchup against Texas. Ringer, ringer, ringer. But this year doesn't matter. History doesn't matter when it comes to this year's matchup, right? And I think Texas just has too much. I think they're gonna move on and possibly be in a college football playoff. This one, besides Oregon versus Washington, guys, the SEC championship, and it is almost every year, Alabama versus Georgia, is another one of those quarterfinal, feels like college football playoff games where it's like this is the playoff before the playoff, right? We got Oregon versus Washington. We got Alabama versus Georgia. This is a lot of people feel like Alabama is going to maybe upset Georgia. Georgia kind of had a close game against Georgia Tech. Alabama pulled it out of their skin of their teeth in Auburn. I mean, that was just an absolute wild play on 4th and 31. They score a touchdown with like a minute left or something like that, and Alabama escaped Auburn. Both these teams didn't have the best performance over last week, and let's just put it like that. But there's a lot of talk on this one because Alabama could sneak in if they upset Georgia. Will Georgia be out of the playoff if they lose to Alabama? I mean, these are conversations that we can have for a long time here, but who's going to win the game is what we're doing here. So I just think Georgia's the best team in the whole country. The recruits they have, the talent they have, the depth they have, their coach is a 2-time champ. I don't think Alabama's going to win this game. I think Georgia will win this game by probably 10 or within one possession. I don't see them winning more than 10, though. I think Alabama will give them a fight, but eventually I think Georgia just has too much. Louisville, Florida State. Florida State has been getting by. They're 2-0 without their quarterback, Jordan Travis, since he's gotten hurt. A lot of people want Florida State to lose. I think this is the moment they do. I think Louisville's going to get him in this one. I think Louisville's going for the upset, and this is where Florida State can come out of the college football playoff conversation. I think they're just due. Now, if Florida State wins this one, you can't leave them out of the college football playoff. I get their quarterbacks out. I get it. And you can say, well, they don't have a quarterback. They're not gonna beat anybody. They're not gonna beat anybody in the playoff. You can say that, but Duck fans, we know it best. What happened against Ohio State in 2014 when Cardale Jones was Ohio State's 3rd string quarterback? You know how confident I was that Mariota and that his Heisman year going into the national championship, that we had Ohio State, a team that had their 3rd string quarterback. Oh, I was like, lock this in. Oh, well, didn't go my way. So if Florida State ends up winning and going undefeated, you can't punish them, and they're in. Now, do I think they'll fare well against any playoff team? No, I think they'll lose. I think they'll lose by double digits, more than 2 or 3 touchdowns if they win against Oregon. But they're 13-0. And let's say if Bo Nix went down for the year and Oregon was 13-0. Would you want to be left out of the college football playoff if you just went undefeated and you're just because you have one injury on your team? Now, given it is significant, would you want to be left out? No. So that's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch all these games and how they fold and what the last playoff is. All I know is if Oregon wins and avenges their loss, there's no way they're out. They've been the best one-loss team in the college football playoff ranking throughout. And I wouldn't expect that to change at the last second, especially if they avenge their loss they lost to, right? Then you got Iowa, Michigan. This is the one where everybody thinks Michigan's going to win. All I got to say is watch out. Iowa's defense is good, especially against the run. And what does Michigan like to do? Run the football. If they can't run the football, does J.J. McCarthy have the arm to win? I think he will. I think Michigan will get the win. All I'm saying is watch out. If Michigan can't run the football the way they want to, can Iowa score enough to pull the upset is the big question, because we all know Iowa can play defense. They just cannot score for the life of them. So I got Texas in the Big 12. I got Georgia in the SEC. I got Oregon in the Pac-12. I got Louisville in the ACC, and I got Michigan in the Big 10. Moving on. My top 4 college football playoff teams. Let's do this before we head out. If everything goes as predicted as I have it, I got Georgia number 1. I got Michigan number 2. I would have Oregon number 3, and I would have Florida State number 4 if they were to win. But if they were not to win and Louisville pulls the upset as I have predicted, I would have Texas in over Alabama. And obviously, if Alabama loses, Georgia wins, that conversation's over. But if, like, let's say Alabama wins and Texas wins, I would still put Texas over Alabama because they have the head-to-head. And then there's the conversation of, does Georgia still remain in? And Alabama goes in as well because they beat Georgia. Then Michigan's a lock. Do you put Oregon? Do you put Texas or Alabama? It could get crazy here, guys. It can get crazy. All I know is I think there's a very good chance that Oregon's in no matter what. If they win, all they got to do is beat the Huskies. I think they're in. Obviously, if the Huskies beat the Ducks, they're in. They're undefeated. But this is the most chaotic college football playoff year. It's gonna be cool to see when this thing expands to 12 teams and how this thing shakes out. But I think the Ducks are gonna get this one. I think they're gonna be their third out of 5 years, third Pac-12 title. I think they're gonna do it in the first top 5 matchup ever in Oregon versus Washington. You guys remember the first matchup was the first ever top 10 matchup. This is now the first ever top 5 matchup between the Ducks and Huskies. So there it is, guys. I appreciate everybody for tuning in once again. I'm your host, Dominiqk Peterson, and this is the DuckZone503 Podcast. We talk all things Oregon football. If you haven't already, guys, hit that like and subscribe button for me down below. As always, guys, go Ducks. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I give you guys 2 podcasts a week, trying to get recruits in here as soon as possible, and all Oregon football updates are on our social media accounts at DuckZone503 on all platforms. Make sure you go follow us there. Rate on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, rate the podcast for me 5 stars. So, guys, this is going to be big time. Cannot wait. Las Vegas Friday night. This is going to be absolutely insane. Oregon versus Washington, man. One of the biggest games of my lifetime that we're going to be able to experience and watch, man. Pray that the Ducks win. God bless for the Ducks. This is going to be absolutely great. I'm going to be right back here on YouTube, guys, for you. Right back here on Spotify for you for the recap and analysis episode of this game, hopefully for a Duck win. So I'll see you guys here probably sometime on Sunday afternoon. We'll get on here and we'll do our thing and recap and analyze this game from Friday night. All right, guys. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Go Ducks. See you on Sunday.